Hey guys, Dr. Bain here. We're on the second episode of the podcast, and actually today it's going to be a pretty cool podcast because I've actually got Dr. Sean on here. So, Dr. Sean, introduce yourself.
Good morning, Dr. Bain. My name is Dr. Sean Malone.
You know, so tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Tell them about the history. You know, today's I think is a great episode to talk about you, and then also talk about some other cool stuff.
Yeah. How we ended up working together.
Yeah. How did you end up getting into chiropractic? How did you end up contacting me?
Those are two different stories.
Yeah.
I was in college. I wanted to be a vocal performance major. I was going to NAU, and I thought I could sing a little bit, but I couldn't read music, and I wasn't very talented. And I kept going to auditions, and I saw people that were infinitely more talented than I was. So no matter how bad I wanted it, I kept knowing that I needed a plan B.
Yeah.
So then I was in psychology at NAU, and they started talking about neurotransmitters in the brain and how it affects everything that you do. And so the body became important.
Right.
And it affects who you are and how you are, behaviors and attitudes. And so I started going to class at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
For the first time in college, I was looking forward to going to class.
Right.
So I became interested in the body and in anatomy. My dad's a chiropractor, so just over the course of a few weeks, I knew I wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
And then I actually looked at other types of doctoring. DO, MD, I thought I was intimidated. I didn't know if I was smart enough. I didn't know if I wanted that much school. My dad asked me in high school if I wanted to be a chiropractor.
Did you already know that you didn't like, general medicine at the time? Were you taking pharmaceuticals or, were you doing anything like that?
No, Dad raised us. I never had any vaccinations when I was raised. He taught us that basically an adjustment in vitamin C was all we needed for pretty much everything we did.
Yeah, good luck telling anybody
If we were
that
Greek,
now.
we'd be Windex, but we were a chiropractic family, so it was adjustments in vitamin C.
Yeah, well, good luck telling anybody that now, right? I mean, but there is kind of an awakening happening, I think, of people starting to move further away from traditional medicine. I think there's more people moving into it. There's good things to that, and then I think there's negatives to that too. So once you grew up and you decide you want to go to chiropractic school and stuff like that, what was that like for you going to, you went to Palmer, so a lot of people who obviously don't know much about chiropractic school, Palmer's kind of the original chiropractic college.
They call it the Fountainhead.
The Fountainhead, that's right. and so, I think it was kind of funny. I think you should probably tell the victory story about your epic speech. Put you on the spot.
I told you that one time the other day, and now it's an epic speech.
And now it's an epic speech.
It wasn't an epic speech. It was an epic day in my life.
Yeah, well, tell them about the epic day.
The speech to everybody else really didn't matter. It was just big for me.
Yeah.
When I was going to Palmer, I got lucky enough to serve as the representative of the student body.
Right.
So I'm the student body president, which allowed me the opportunity to get to know a lot of the faculty and administration and people in the school. And at the time, the president of the college was Dr. Virgil Strang.
Right.
And super philosopher, super chiropractic, had been in chiropractic 70 years, I think, at the time.
Yep.
And was an amazing man. His son was a chiropractor and worked at the school, and I had the opportunity to have lunch with him on the day he passed away.
For sure.
And so after that, I got asked to sit on the council of students, or I was the representative to represent the students on the council that was securing or electing the next president of the college.
Absolutely.
And so we had all these applications and books, and as I told you the other day, we had a bunch of applications about a half an inch thick, and there was one over there about 5 inches thick, and it was the prospectus of Dr. Guy Reekman. And he had sent in his vision for Palmer College.
Yeah.
And what I want to do with chiropractic and how we're going to change the world. So he was elected or given the job, you could say. Yeah. And the story about my speech was his inauguration. And so they had the entire school, all faculty and staff. There was alumni there. I couldn't guess the people, but I'd say 3,000 or 4,000 people were there.
Right.
And as I'm driving down Davenport one day, I'm literally in my truck, and that's when inspiration hit. And so I had this little cubby in my truck, and I pulled the cubby up, and I grabbed a piece of paper out of my door of my truck, and I sat and I wrote there on a stoplight.
Yep.
And that was the line that came to me driving around. And when I gave the speech, I said that chiropractic's time has come, and that the universe had been drawing back the catapult of chiropractic for the last 100 years,
yep.
And then that the universe had chosen Dr. Guy Reekman to come and cut the string and launch it into the stratosphere. So there was a lot of momentum and excitement, and then the crowd chants up, and they were excited about him, and he was cheering. We're like, yeah! It was a beautiful moment about chiropractic's time has come.
Yeah.
And we had a representative who finally believed and espoused what chiropractic was really about. He wasn't trying to get us prescribing rights.
Yeah.
He was trying to get us educated so that we could educate our patients on the power of innate, the power of above, down, inside out, the power of chiropractic healing.
So then, obviously then you got into, getting into chiropractic. You started working in the field. You had your own clinics. You had a lot of things happen, but, specifically maybe, enlighten people about, because, then you had the accident. So, tell them a little bit about that, and then maybe I'll go into then kind of the interesting series of events that then led to you getting in the clinic. I'll take off on that.
Well, I did. I graduated in October of 1999.
Yep.
And I started my first clinic in January of 2000. January 3rd, 2000.
Yep.
So I had a great 9 years in that clinic, and finally upgraded and upsized and went to a much bigger location a few miles away. And I was there until 2012. Excuse me. And in 2012 is when I used to race dirt bikes in the desert, and I had a pretty bad day and I had a crash. So I broke my back. I had compression fractures at T11, T12, and L1. The coccyx was broken, and L5 disc was herniated.
Yeah.
So over the course of the next, probably at that time, 2 or 3 years, was intensive medical treatment.
Yep.
I couldn't walk. I felt like I had some sort of stick shoved up my rear and making me stand up straight and tall. Couldn't bend. There was no motion, no mobility. I really couldn't get adjusted. I couldn't handle anybody putting pressure on my body.
Yep.
I had tons of medications. Eventually, I had what's called a radio frequency ablation, where they'll take and burn the nerves that sense pain. So they're not burning motor nerves. They're not burning my ability to sense anything in my legs or move. But the nerve that perceives pain in the brain is, for lack of a better term, paralyzed, so you can't perceive pain. And so the pain kind of went away, but my body was still turning into rust. And I had tried lots of chiropractors and lots of buddies and lots of stretches, lots of massage, medication didn't help at all.
Yeah.
It'll help you sleep, but it won't really help you at all. And so really in probably September of 2020 is when I saw your ad come across my Facebook page.
See, now I find that really intriguing because, it's obviously I do a lot of social media work or whatever, and, and I boost videos and I make ads and I do things like that. But it's interesting though, even though that's true, only a certain kind of person seems to find my ads. I mean, yes, you put in the specifics of like, what's your ideal, whatever, and they use all these metrics, but I'm more than fully convinced that there is a energetic pull or a series of events that was going to happen no matter whether I had boosted a video or made an ad or I didn't.
The right people will see your ad every time.
Right. And the right people, the ones that are supposed to see it, the ones that are, meant to be treated at the clinic or whatever. And, and I think just for the audience then, so what's really interesting is then after Sean saw that, saw the ad and stuff like that, he sent me this like email. And just to give everybody kind of some context about what the clinic was like at the time, the clinic at the time was, I was seeing a lot of people, and I was having a lot of long days. I was working probably, Monday through Thursday, sometimes Fridays too. And a lot of those days were like 12-hour days, all of them. I still work 12s. We both work 12s, but we do get a day off and a half day basically. But at that time I was going sun up to sundown, and I was probably seeing like, I don't know, like the most I ever saw in a day was like 62 or 65. I think that's the record of people I saw. And with the type of, healing that we do, that's a lot of people. That's a ton of people. Yeah. My body was destroyed, and I was getting so tired, and I wasn't necessarily not enjoying treating people, but it was just like, it was taking a really bad toll on my own body, and I knew that it was sacrificing what I was able to provide people. So then it was like, in terms of my metaphysical journey and stuff like that, it was still pretty in the early stages, but, at the time, but, it was funny because I had literally, before you sent that email, I had just said, man, I could really, you use some help. I really need somebody in the clinic. But it was kind of just like, I had just started thinking about it, and I wasn't quite sure, what it would look like. Well, what was I going to do? How was I going to find somebody? Because, a lot of the stuff that we do at the clinic, as you know, it's so different, and I'd have to teach someone from scratch. I'd have to basically take them, whatever. I have to like erase their brain like the Matrix, and then I have to reteach them.
You need a blue pill.
Yeah, you need blue pill them or red pill them. I can't remember the movies. I love that movie, but I can't remember which one's which. But take the pill. So then, sure enough, like I'm in the clinic one day, and like our office manager Teresa, comes up, and she's like, "Hey, you got this email from this other doctor." And the funny thing is, at first I was like, "Oh boy, here we go," because 99% of the time it's some other chiropractor who quit. And now he does a full-time gig of like trying to sell other chiropractors a bunch of garbage. Right. It's like, hey, I look at your website and it stinks. Like you have a 1 grammatical error, and are you paying somebody and they didn't notice this one letter out of place? Like, hire me. I'm 13. You could be
doing better.
You could be, 99 new patients a month, and you're going to make, $10,000 dollars a minute. It's like, no, you're not. You're just, come to sign up for our webinar and we're going to teach you the secrets of how do you get more patients. And I'm like, no, that's not how it really works. But she's like, yeah, she's like, I don't know. I don't think this one, she just like,
Teresa said that?
Yeah. Teresa was like, she was like, he put a lot of effort into this email. So she's like, if he is trying to sell you something, like he's even talking about getting you lunch. And I was like, well, at least I can get lunch. At a minimum, if he is trying to sell me something,
want some food?
At least I can get some food, and then deny the sales tactic thing or the marketing, what have you, whatever it was. But then I read your email and I was like, oh, so, and just for a summary for everybody, Sean's email basically was like, hey, he talked about his accident a long time ago, talked about the exceedingly large amounts of pain that he's had ever since, and that no one's been able to help him. And I think is what really makes the whole thing fascinating is that you already had been exposed to ABC, the technique that we do, like a long time ago. You just never did anything with it, or you just never got treated with it, really.
Right. So yeah, that's good context to go back a little bit. I had seen advanced biostructural correction in a chiropractic magazine, probably in 2004 or 5, somewhere around in there. And I bought it and I studied it. At the time, it was the home study course.
Right.
So you get a bunch of books and you get a bunch of VCR tapes, and I watched all of that and I read it and I digested it, and I started implementing that on patients in my office. Right. And I did it on some people, and I had really good results with some people, and I had really strange results with other people.
Right.
And I didn't know how to handle that. I didn't know what to do with it. I had no one to check my work.
Yep.
I had no mentor, and I'd never even been adjusted like that.
Yep.
So if I have results that I don't know what to do with, I kind of just let it drop by the wayside. So I went on for the next 14 or 15 years before I saw your ad. And that's when I was like, I know that technique. I would love to see that. I've tried everything else. Why don't I get adjusted like this? And I used to know this. And so the email, really the spirit of the email was more about, I love chiropractors. Let's be friends. Let me take you to lunch. Will you adjust me? I'll adjust you. Yeah. Back then, I thought you would have wanted that.
Well,
I wasn't doing ABC.
Just so everybody knows, I responded back to his email and I told him, sure, absolutely. But I said, you got to treat me. I said, you have to learn ABC. I was very adamant. I said, if you have to learn ABC to treat me, otherwise you're going to have to pay me like everybody else.
I will not be adjusted any other way.
Yeah. I said, nobody touches me with anything else, And if any of my chiropractor friends or stuff are watching this right now, I hope nobody takes that as a sting against them. No. It's just that, with the knowledge that I have, it's now I can't ever imagine going back to the old way, knowing what I know,
right.
And that's not a sting against anybody. I just hope that more, and I know that here's the thing, like doctors are going to help people, a lot of times regardless of technique, because there is more things going on, I think, in the body. And, and we'll definitely discuss a little bit of that today too. But just by somebody having a very good intention and to do things, somebody can recover from certain things no matter what's done to them, just because your energy body or whatever is very powerful, and you can help somebody that way.
It's the power of intent.
Yeah. The power of intent, the power of your mind, the power of your idea and your care to somebody, right? That's not nothing. That's worth a lot of stuff. And I would actually probably argue in the long run, that's the more important one, because you leave the body behind at some point. And all you've got left is your consciousness and your mind. So if you can heal that better and progress that, then you've already done something awesome.
Yeah, one of the oldest adages in healthcare is that patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
Make a connection, be a real person, see them and their problem for what it is, and then treat it. But don't just see them as you don't x-ray their ID card, their insurance card when they walk in the door to see what you can get out of them.
Well, and I think that's true. So when we talk about advanced biostructural correction, or the technique that me and Sean do, or Sean and I do. Gosh, I gotta learn grammar. You know, so it's probably as good as I think body work will ever get in terms of mechanics. I don't think there's going to. Maybe there will be. You know, if somebody comes up with something better than ABC for a spine, I'm in. If you can somehow invent something better, I don't know how you would do that, but if it happens, I'm in.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've said this to patients a million times. Like, if something better in terms of mechanics gets invented, I'm in. I'm going to do it the next day.
Right.
If you can prove it to me, and my body all of a sudden excels even faster than ABC has excelled it, I'm all in the next day. I'll tell every single patient, like, hey, I was pretty close, but you think that was awesome? Here's like something even better than that.
Yeah. The biggest lesson in learning to move over to ABC Chiropractic was the fact that I got to drop my ego.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, we tell chiropractors about this technique and they get defensive because it's telling them, basically it's telling them that what they're currently doing is wrong.
Right.
And they've built a dynasty around that, you know, false premise.
Yep.
So, and I love chiropractors. I think everybody's well-intentioned. That's my people, man. Those are my homies. I just learned new information about pushing bones in a different direction, and I only care about results.
Yeah.
So when I saw the difference in my body, I got to drop the ego and say, this way is better or this way is better. The patients don't care, and I didn't care. I just want better.
Yeah.
So as a doctor, whatever's going to give those patients the best results, that's what I'm going to do with regardless of my ego.
It's interesting because, you know, a lot of times I think people and I'm not just saying our field, one of my number one pet peeves, I don't like the word alternative health, because that makes it sound like it downgrades it. It's like, well, this is an alternative to the standard. And a lot of people don't realize that the actual history of medicine is that they were never the standard. They were actually made fun of, and they were actually, you know what I mean? You can go back and find articles about, they call them the pill pushers or the pus pushers once they invented vaccinations and stuff. That was their other nickname by the general public. That wasn't
pus pushers.
Yes, they're called
vaccinations had pus in them. Huh?
Yes, the original vaccinations were made from the pus of cows, right? Smallpox,
awesome.
right? They take a little mucus from that, and then they'd stab you in the arm, and you can guess what probably happened. Killed a lot of people directly. But that's a whole story for another day or whatever. And I'm not here to change anyone's opinion on stuff like that.
So you don't like alternative care. I heard it described one time that chiropractic is not alternative care because that assumes that we're just using an alternate route to get to the same end.
I think
we're not. We're trying to achieve a completely different goal.
I think we're part of health. I think that's what it is. I think we are a big part of general health. And obviously at our clinic, we also do a lot of stuff with nutrition and food supplements and things. And that's a whole nother section of it. But I think, in terms of today's, topics of things, I think we have a great segue just from what we've discussed so far. And I think purpose is a good thing to talk about. What is people's life purpose? And you and I talked about it a little bit before we came on the show I think there's a brand new generation of very confused human beings. I feel like they've been sent here for a reason, like the newest generation, the generation, whatever they call them, Z, X, Y, I'm not sure.
Alphabet soup.
Whatever, gamma, alpha, beta, whatever they call them, right? The new generation, the people who are probably anywhere between the ages of 10 and 20 years old right now. I feel like their whole generation has lost, and I think, though, that there's plenty of these people in other generations, too. People who are on this planet, they kind of plopped in on here, and they're like, I have no idea why I'm here. Purpose. You get up every morning, and what is the reason you got up, and what are you doing every day? That doesn't mean you have to be Mother Teresa or something like that, or Gandhi or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. Those people were sent here for their own purpose, and there's a lot.
No one's born a saint. It's that
True.
daily work that they earn that through a lifetime.
Right. Well, in a lifetime of struggles and a higher calling, I suppose.
Lessons.
But we all have lessons to learn, and there's reasons why people live at different ways or different lives, different goals of what they're trying to accomplish. But it's interesting because as the clinic has gone on longer, the purpose that I feel like I have, the clinic has, now that you're involved as well, it's changing, it's morphing, it's evolving, it's organically moving, and it's probably moving where it was always supposed to go. I'm a firm believer that there are a lot of key points that are already set in motion before we're even here. And I believe that for a lot of reasons. A lot of times it's because I've read a lot of things about, past life regressions or people being hypnotized and they end up going into their subconscious, their higher self, and they're explaining, well, this is why John does that. And, John, the conscious John is like, you record him on video and he gets to watch himself back later telling himself, this is why you do that. And he's like, what? Like strange occurrences like that. Well, some people might think they're strange. I think that
separating the conscious from the subconscious.
Yeah, and the subconscious knows everything about you. It knows everything that's ever happened to you. It knows all the traumas it's buried and not allowed you to remember. It remembers why you even came, to this planet. What was your intention of the things you wanted to learn or add? I don't think anybody could convince me otherwise, at least right now, that the pathway of how you and I met, how the clinic was made, what we're doing right now, the pushes that we're making right now in terms of now we have this outlet in order to reach more people and do more things. Like I think you said it best the other day is that, there's a higher thing coming up here. We have more potential.
Totally agree.
I think that this is not just a clinic, and like you said, I think the clinic was the way that we were able to get rolling. I think that was how I was able to at least get some bills paid, start getting a life established for myself, get some normalcy, get more mature. So
you feel more stable, more
foundational. Yeah, you get more stability, you get more comfortable with existing as an adult, right? You know what I mean? Because you kind of, once you graduate, you're just kind of thrown out into the world, and it's, you know what I mean? They're like, whoa, now what do I do now? So it's just interesting to think about all that and kind of the future potential of how we could touch a lot of lives and, you know what I mean? And potentially help others on their path to, I don't like the word enlightenment necessarily, but
finding their purpose,
finding their consciousness. I think a lot of times now that's actually what you and I are really doing.
Agreed. If we go back to the story, I didn't finish my adjusting story with you. I emailed you and said, let's have lunch. And I came to the clinic. We never went to lunch, by the way.
I didn't get my lunch, but that's okay. We've had other lunches
we came
now.
to the clinic and he adjusted me. And I left that adjustment. I left the clinic that first day knowing my life was different.
Yeah.
I've been cracked a lot. I've had amazing chiropractic adjustments from some of the masters. I've been adjusted a lot. But I've never once in my life left and felt like my body was corrected.
Right.
And so you said, I got to fix this. I want to see you twice a week. And so I came, and in like a month, in 8 visits, I had decided to change my entire career.
Yeah.
So, and that's because of the changes that were happening in my body. I couldn't, and then there's 2 sides to this, really. It's kind of fun. As my testimony is really strong about this because I got to see the patient side first.
Yeah.
I got to be saved. I got to be the person that was in massive pain and watch that leave my body, not only slowly, but rapidly, quicker than I could ever even imagine. That I never even thought this would happen. So I'm seeing unbelievable life changes as a patient. And then I decided to get certified in this. So we go back to school and fly out there and learn more and more. And the more I learned on the doctor's side was about how traditional chiropractic had actually created a lot of the problems in my body.
Right.
So how can I have this life-changing result and have as a recipient and then go to work every day and continue to propagate the same thing that had been done to me, not in a malicious way, in a loving way, in a healing way, but it still is, I just learned what I learned. And so you're talking about purpose and finding your passion. Mine was reignited. Yeah. My whole life became different. It's like the possibilities of what I could do were so much greater because of all the pain that was no longer in my body.
Right.
And the possibilities of what I could provide other people. I've been talking to patients the last few days and our results, man, yesterday in the clinic, Thursday, was super good. Everybody got amazing meningeal releases. None of them were uncomfortable. C7 dropped on everybody. L5 dropped on everybody. Like, I was getting amazing correction. And so they were leaving and they're like, man, thank you. They were showing gratitude.
Right.
And even Guadalupe, she's like, I thank God for you every day. And I love this. And what I really want the patients to know is that now my passion has been reignited so high that when that feeling that she feels, that happiness and the gratitude after I adjust her, I want her to know it. I feel that twice.
Yeah.
It makes me more happy to provide that relief to her than it makes her happy to get it. And my gratitude to God and the universe for giving me this gift and power and blessing and the skills and understanding to provide it, to give her that, I think it's the biggest win-win-win I could ever see. I win, the patient wins, our clinic wins, we propagate a message, she's out there telling people, and it's happening so much faster than I ever thought possible.
It is, and that's the funny thing, you know, and we just keep getting more and more signs that we're just all the time, you know, I constantly tell you I see angel numbers all the time. I Google them and they're like, you're on the right path, dude. You're crushing it.
You're doing the right thing.
And more things are happening that cannot be explained on the normal physical plane to me as well. I keep having more deep meditations where things are like planted in my brain. I have, you know, I have more. Here's a really weird one. I think I've been telling you more and more about how this is happening, and I'm sure I know it's related to not necessarily God sending me more energy in particular. I think it's more of a rediscovery of previous talents from other lifetimes or other existences. But like, a lot of my patients are starting to cry for no reason. Not because
a lot of tears in the clinic lately.
Not because anything hurts. Not because they're sad. I ask them, I said, why are you crying? And they're like, I don't know. Like, they just don't know. They're like, they just break down, and it's like a healing experience for them. And when I used to do, you know, old methods of treating people and stuff, you might have that happen from time to time. Mm-hmm. You know, time to time. It's not like anybody who's, you know, watching this right now who does another type of profession or, you know, whatever like that. It's not, you ask any of them, of course, they've all seen a crier, right? You know, of somebody who they're very grateful for what you did, or they had such a great amount of relief and that they're crying because they're so happy. That doesn't mean that never happened with older results. I can only speak for what I'm doing myself, right? Or what you're doing yourself, right? But like, as of lately, it's been happening like almost every day. I mean, I almost have like 2, 3, 4 criers every 4 days a week, every week on time. Like, it's expected now. I've gotten so good at consoling people, and that's what I think I'm being shown, you know, because you and I have talked about how it seems like almost like deeper levels of how the world works and our purpose is being shown to us. And I'm starting to learn that as the mechanical side of this is getting easier and easier and easier over time, I'm getting better. I'm faster. I'm stronger. I know more. I'm more precise. I can get it done faster and better than I ever did a year ago. And that just keeps layering itself on, you know, to that ability. But what's being shown to me now more is, okay, that's important, Patrick, but the body is going to break down no matter what you do to it. It's going to die. You know what I mean? It's like a car. That car, you can take care of that car as best as anybody out there, but eventually it's going to have to go to the dump. Eventually. Now, that doesn't mean it's not worth treating people's bodies. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am being shown more recently, I think, with all these people, I'm telling you, spontaneously crying. It's like some of them, I haven't even treated them yet. That's a really strange thing. They just see my face and they cry. Not because hopefully not because I'm ugly. You know, hopefully it's not, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's so crazy ugly, and then they have to cry. But no,
his face hurts.
You're so ugly, it hurts. You know, so
all men and women created by the go. You know the
I'm waiting for that Joe Biden quote to have a good. I was waiting for that to have a good moment. At least I'm not smelling my patients when they come in right like that. But
I remember when you first adjusted me, I felt overcome with emotion.
Right, and
that emotional release for me was the fact that I feel like there was hope.
I think that's a big part of it.
And a lot of patients get that first release. I flew out of town this weekend to treat family members, and I did one big lateral meningeal release on a large, burly, strong man.
Right.
And as soon as that let go, the tears let go.
And just for anybody listening out there who's not a current patient, which might be a good chunk of you, a meningeal release is a technique that we do to our patients where, you know, we made some discoveries, and I say we, but people who do ABC, that you build scar tissue inside your back. And you build this kind of internal scar tissue inside of your spine, which glues you together. It attaches to your spinal cord. It's actually, it's a very detrimental thing in terms of creating a lot of neurological symptoms and lack of mobility. And then I think that goes into a really intense spiral of
Postural distortions.
But, and when you move past the mechanics side of that, you go into the emotional, spiritual side where this person feels crippled, they're hopeless, they're depressed. And now that creates a whole cycle of disease and things like that, which is, I think, actually a big reason why, treating somebody's back and relieving them of these problems doesn't just obviously do that. I think it does something much deeper.
There's emotional. I heard it described as though every time we get an injury, we are in a certain mental state. When we receive the injury, we could feel victimized. We could feel sad. We could feel lonely. We could feel depressed at the time of injury.
Yeah.
And as our body heals that and heals it with scar tissue, we're kind of locking in that emotion with the scar.
Absolutely.
So 10 years later or 2 years later or 30, when we release the scar tissue, we're releasing that emotion along with it. And all of a sudden it just pours out of them. It's like a rebirth, a renaissance. They feel so much better just to get that poison out.
Yeah. Well, and
let the tears flow.
Well, and the funny thing was, like, I was telling you that story the other day about, and I don't ever name a patient just unless they ever give me, they want specifically, they don't care about their name being mentioned. But, I had a patient, what was it? He's a new patient, him. We were just talking about him the other day. He's got that huge kyphosis and stuff like that. And, he's, and he has a really unfortunate history of a lot of terrible things that have befallen him. But what was really interesting was, like, on I think it was like the third visit, like I said, this emotional breakthrough thing that continues to build and happen more often. So I was treating him, and I treated his body, and it looked awesome. It was like, smooth, everything went great. His hump, that he has this giant hump in his back, it significantly continued to reduce again. It's astonishing what's happened to this man in like 3-4 visits.
Wow.
It's really astonishing. It's one, and ABC, if you ever watch our videos and you look at our posture changes or listen to our testimonials of people talking about it, like, a lot of what people would call miraculous happens in the clinic every week, all the time.
It's fun.
But occasionally a case comes along that even blows my mind, because we're kind of spoiled, right?
Is that one?
Well, because you and I get spoiled, right? We get such great results with people all the time that when something either doesn't go the way I expect it to, which is awesome all the time, or in the other case, if I do something and it's even more crazy than I ever thought in terms of results, that's, it gets you re-excited, reignited. But in his case, so, like, it was really strange. We treated him. And then at the clinic, we also do a technique called NRT, nutrition response testing. It's a muscle testing technique for nutrition stuff. And so I was like, hey, lay down. We'll start doing that now, because I had a back-to-back appointment with him. And so as he's like laying there, he's probably laying down for, like, I'm not even long. It was like maybe 30 seconds. And I saw something was coming. Like, I could see it welling up in his face. And I was like, hey, you're all right. And he just he's like, I think I'm going to start crying. And he just burst out crying. He's like, and like I said, there's nothing shameful about any of this. That's not what any of this discussion is.
Well, I think it also happens because you create, or we in the office create, a safe space for that to happen.
Right. And that's something I've been kind of mulling over in my head too, because once again, like, even a year ago, it didn't happen. I never had patients like cry like this all the time, But I think a lot of that is the development of my own spirit and your development of your spirit getting, I don't know, like, fulfilling that higher calling. And so then these things are I almost feel like they're allowed to happen now. Whereas before, I think the people that are watching over us, the spirits, the guardian angels, the ascended masters, whatever you want to name it, the people who are watching and are on our team were like, okay, well, let's not go there yet. He's not ready for that yet. He's still trying to manage just treating the body. I think that's really what it is. He's still trying to figure out, how do I move that L2? And I would, if I couldn't do something, you'd go through this process where you're like constantly mulling it over and over and over as you sleep at night. And you're like, and you'd have those victory days of treating people, and you'd be celebrating and you'd be dancing around and whatever. And then you'd have a miserable day of treating people where everything went wrong. It was just a train wreck, and yeah, they still got results because once again, you and I are spoiled. So they still got probably better results than the old way.
Right.
But I knew that I was better.
There's more.
I knew I could have done it better. And that drove me nuts, but I think that once we hit a certain point of ability level, that all of a sudden now, I think it must have hit a certain point where now all these things are being allowed to be shown to me, to you, to, the clinic and things like that. I mean, there's got to be something like that. I can't imagine there wouldn't be.
Different initiations. As your body gets, you become master of moving bones, right? L2 is nothing to you now.
Right.
And so just as restrictive as a piece of scar tissue is on the spine, regret is on the soul. So now you've learned how to remove scar tissue, and you're allowing your spirit and your clinic and your body to start removing emotions and regrets, right, and harm. And it's things that on a non-physical level, letting go of that stuff too is just as powerful.
Well, and I think too, when I treat people now, I actually, and I know it sounds crazy to some people, but this is real. You can do this. You can control energy, you can transfer, and you can help alleviate people's bad energies. With intention, you can just do that with intention alone. And as long as you're actually humble and you're doing it with the right intentions, that what you want to happen will happen. If that patient is open to healing and I have the full intention every time I'm treating them that this person is healing, they're getting better, and I'm not only healing their body, but I am healing their soul and their spirit, and I'm taking something away that shouldn't be there anymore. All of a sudden, I've noticed that that's when this really started happening, is the more intentful I became in my mind that this was not just mechanics, that I am literally, every time I'm treating you and touching you in some way, I am removing something negative that is holding you back, and I am creating an opening for better, bigger and better things for you.
Cool.
Or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of in my head, but
I think you're removing physical restrictions. You're removing emotional restrictions.
Yeah.
We're assisting in removing chemical restrictions. So that people express freedom and they experience freedom because they're no longer restricted.
Right. Well, and I think that it's a good point that it's interesting to see how Earth, your body, it kind of can bog you down from being who you are. And I think it's an interesting kind of thought because when I read books and stuff about pretty deep metaphysical topics and things like that, they talk about how a lot of times when, for example, I talk about it all the time in the clinic right now, but that's because that's my current area of, I guess you could call it research.
Current focus.
It's my current focus is a lot of metaphysics right now. So, and if you touch metaphysics, then you're touching past life regressions, you're touching, what's on the other side. That's just what metaphysics is. It's this fascination and a study of the why, the how, and the history of our Earth, our planet, our existence. That's what that is. And so I've been digging a lot into that lately, and I'm trying to. I'm almost like doing experiments in the clinic with how I treat somebody or what I talk to them about or what my intentions are based on as I get more information from that, and thus newer and stranger things are occurring in the clinic.
Like what?
Well, it's one, people are more open now. People are opening up more and
I
more.
agree.
And
I've heard
more.
you had some conversation with patients. I'm like, I can't believe he's talking about that with them, and they're very engaged.
They're
so are
super
you. And you
engaged.
open up, and they open up, and we're like, wow.
You can't get them out of my clinic.
Yeah. We're like, next, come on.
I'm like, dude, I got 4 people like waiting in the,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this is a 15-minute appointment. We're at 25 minutes. I'm like 10 minutes behind now. Just because we're having a deep conversation and stuff. But in terms of like, what do I mean? Well, it's like, when I can sense the energy's not right, I would rather spend half that visit on figuring out how can I help them with the problem. Right. That's what I do now. If the energy's immediately off, and it was the other day, I had a patient. Here's a good one. Here's a perfect example, actually. I had a patient come to the clinic. What was that? That was probably on Wednesday. She came in Wednesday, and immediately the energy was off. Because she's usually super excited. She's older, right? She's probably in her 60s, and she's just got the life of someone. She got the spark of someone in her mid-20s.
Good vitality.
Yeah, she never lost that. She just the body got older, but the mind never changed. And that's awesome. I love having that. It jazzes me up. So when someone like that comes in and the whole energy's off, and I can tell a tear is going to break in about 2 seconds, I want to address it. There's no point. That's the one thing this is one of the big takeaways of me this year I learned is there's no point in trying to treat their body if they have that big of a trauma going on.
Right.
They will not allow you to heal them. Their body is in shutdown mode. So I've had several visits recently, honestly, where that happened. And I said, we're not doing any chiropractic today. This is going to be 15 minutes of you telling me what's going on and how can I help you work through it.
Right.
And you know what's funny? People would rather have that. They know it. They know it's true. Because the second I try to work on their body, it's all tense. Everything's tense. They're fighting.
Brick tight.
Yeah, they're not thinking about them right now. They're thinking about the grenade that's been thrown in their lap that day or the day before, right? Their kid is massively sick. Someone's in the hospital. And they came, they tried to squeeze me in that 15-minute gap. Anyway, they didn't want to cancel their appointment because they know how much better they are, but they just were like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I do. I wonder, is there any line? Is there a line that you don't want to cross to where you feel like you're becoming everybody's mother and caregiver and nanny, and you're like, I just came to adjust you. Let's get you physically out of here.
That's a great question.
Physically out of pain.
No, that's a great question. I think that's an appropriate question, in fact, because, it's something I ask myself sometimes is how much can I give?
Right.
How much time, effort, and of course you're not going to please everybody.
Right.
I got plenty of people who are not pleased.
The other side of that question is, did they come here for that? Just because we want to do that for them, is that really what they want?
And that's the other question. And here's the thing. I had the same reservations before I started doing it. Before I started contemplating that, and I'm reading these books and I'm getting these angel numbers and I'm having dreams, I'm having visions, whether or not anybody wants to believe that that's happening to me, it is happening to me. It's undeniable, and the patients are feeling the effects of that in their treatments. That's why they're getting better. I'm fully convinced that's why they're getting better results than I ever used to get.
I guess it's kind of like an analogy when someone says, can I pray for you, or will you pray with me, right?
Yes.
Who's going to say no to that? Who has evil intentions or malicious intent when they're, can I pray with you? No, unless you're just a massive atheist or whatever. I mean,
get off my property.
Yeah, very few people are going to turn that down, even if you don't believe what they believe.
Well,
let's just share a prayer together. That's cool.
Well, it's true. And I think here's the thing. I think everything has to do with how you present it and what is your energy.
Yeah,
if you have it, because a lot of times, like for example, right, if the Mormon folks are showing up to your front door or whatever, a lot of people, that energy would, for whatever reason, throws them off, right? The door-to-door thing really throws people off, or they're genuine. And here's the thing, those people are being genuinely extremely nice.
Right.
They're extremely nice people.
Right.
But sometimes when someone's extremely nice, that throws other people off because they've been betrayed, or because extremely nice people tend to be phony.
Overly defensive.
Defensive. Yeah. Well, you're on the extreme of nice. I'm going to be on the extreme of, closing off and whatever. But, like I said, I used to have that reservation in the beginning of this whole thing when I really started to dig deeper into, like I said, almost experimenting and doing that stuff. And I hope
if it doesn't work, you don't do it again.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if it goes awry on one patient in terms of it throws them off, and for some reason, and all of a sudden I'm checking my schedule and I'm like, where's so and so? They're not on the schedule anymore. Oh yeah, they didn't want to come anymore for some reason.
They weed themselves out.
But that hasn't happened. That's what I've learned is, like, once I took that step, it was the exact opposite. Not only did that patients got better results, they were happier and they were healthier for that, but it actually attracted more people that needed that, where all of a sudden the universe is sending me more people who need me in more ways than just a body. More ways than just a mechanical thing. They need someone to talk to. They need someone who's, they're talking about their spouse. They're talking to things that they just can't tell people about their spouse. They're like, I have this frustration. Here's what I'm going to do. Right. And they're unfortunately, because a lot of people, I think, and this isn't, gotta fix my pillow for my back. A lot of people don't think at a higher consciousness yet. There's a movement happening of people raising their vibration to a higher frequency, and they're thinking in not even just third person, they're almost thinking in like fifth person. More and more people are doing that, where they're looking at both sides to something. Right? Like if they have an argument with their spouse, instead of just getting back in there, right? If you looked at the old timey folks when they used to, when they were married and stuff, like your great grandparents and stuff like that, they never discussed anything.
Yeah.
Dad
Nothing
was
important, right?
Yeah, dad's on the couch. He's got a beer at the end of whatever. She was a stay-at-home mom. She's cooking dinner. They didn't really, when they made love, it was quiet, right? You know, you didn't hear a peep in the other, and it probably didn't happen often unless they were trying to produce another human being, right? But then as time has gone on, if you look at the newest generation of couples and stuff, there's a lot of talking a lot of times. You know, if you look at generation Z, X, Y, Alpha, Beta, Zeta, right? When they get in relationship with someone kind of on both extremes. They're either not saying anything at all or they're doing a lot, to the point where a lot of masculinity is being questioned now because men are actually listening to their wives and trying to resolve things verbally without just,
Grunting.
instead of throwing stuff around and then hiding in the garage. That's not happening as often as it used to, But anyway, like I said, I would have thought it would have imploded more, but I just kept getting shown more things, and I just kept having this intuition. And to me, intuition is a legit thing. It's real. I think it comes from a higher power or a higher version of yourself is trying to help you out and say, hey, that's a good decision, or that's not that's a bad decision. Don't go do that, right? And it's up to you to listen to it or ignore it, right? And every time I ignore my intuition, something bad happens, But that's what's really intriguing, is that the results are better. And I'm finding that it's also improving me. I think you and I talked about lessons, when you incarnate on this earth and you have a general plan of like, what are the key events of your life that are going to happen? Of course, you still have free will. So other things that you didn't plan to happen are going to happen, but that's why you got a team on the other side who's kind of playing, doing calls at the last second, right?
Umpires and refs.
Yeah. You got some guys on the other side. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh crap, hit the button, Patrick just got hit by a car, and
he wasn't supposed to.
He wasn't supposed to get hit by that car. It's not on the plan, and we gotta figure that out, right? But and how's it gonna work on Monday? But you know what I mean. But it's just because they send you those things. I'm learning by healing others. I was not the guy whose shoulder you would cry on 5 years ago,
right?
Because I was so emotionally blocked in my own life from my own traumas. You could go all the way back to a bad narcissistic mother and all that stuff, and how that shut me down emotionally and made me unable to feel the feelings that other people felt, because to me, feelings were uncomfortable. The feeling of love, the
Something
feeling
you want to avoid.
Yeah, you tried to avoid it. Like if I was dating somebody and they gave me a hug, it actually physically made me ill and cringe.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I dated several people in the past who, it was like, they wanted to bring it to the next level. They wanted to go to that next step, and there was no way that was going to happen. Whether that was conscious or not at the time, I don't think it was conscious to me. I think I was so wrapped up in the emotions, so wrapped up in the traumas, so wrapped up in all of my head and things like that, that I don't even think I realized I was doing it at the time. And then as the years started to pass, and I started thinking about how bizarre it was that I had these blockages, that it was not normal to do that, right? To always keep people an arm's length away and whatever, and not talk about these things and address them, right? Because you keep burying that trauma lower, How could I ever have healed somebody back then? Because I wasn't healed myself. If you yourself are not healed, how could you heal somebody else? At least as good as you could, not your full potential. Your potential is much higher if you're actually much more sound in mind and body yourself. Kind of like when you go to the doctor or something like that, and he's super out of shape and he's telling you to get on a better diet. How's anybody going to respond to that? If your medical doctor, someone's like 300 pounds obese, he's going to go, hit 5 guys after this and, whatever. And another excuse to hit the...
You know the thing.
It never gets old. But that guy never gets old.
It sounds like your medical doctor giving you advice. The thing you're supposed to do.
That I don't do. That I never do. I don't do. Right? But you're not going to listen to that guy. You know what I mean? If that guy's telling me about exercise advice, or whatever, like, who's going to listen to that guy? Nobody's going to listen to that guy. So who am I to then console a patient about their love, or how do you handle talking to your spouse, right? Because it's like I'm telling, the bizarre things that people want my advice on goes far beyond my
Cracking
job.
bones, yeah.
Oh, it's not even close.
Right.
I'd actually argue 3/4 of my day has nothing to do with chiropractic. Honestly, most of it doesn't. Honestly, the things that I'm talking about, the things that we're working through with people, the things that to them are really important. I wish it was always about, well, not really, but that, like, you'd think it would be more relevant. Like, they'd want to talk about their bodies more, their backs and things like that. But as of late, that's not what they want to talk about. They want to talk about stuff that we're talking about right now on this podcast. That's why we created the podcast, by the way. We had to. I had too many people.
So you could talk and get your message.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't even like the message I thought that I needed to tell. Like, how would I have ever predicted in chiropractic college that here I'd be, you know what I mean, growing a social media presence slowly but surely, and now having a podcast talking about things that I never believed in. I was an atheist for a long time ago. And I guess that's even an interesting story in itself about how do you get from an atheist probably a decade ago to now. It's like I have so many trippy thoughts that people it boggles people's mind. They're like, where'd you read that? How do you know that? Or where did you get that from? And I'm telling them this book, that by this guy, listen to that guy's talk. Go listen to some near-death experiences and let that kind of simmer in your mind about what does that imply, and go research religions and their history. And
so your ability to heal is just a product of how well you've healed yourself.
I think that's what it really is.
You're a better healer the more healed you are.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's interesting that the more healed you become, you start to attract more people who are higher up on that. I don't want to call it the hierarchy, but you start to attract people of a higher consciousness level. The higher yours becomes, magically another one appears in my clinic.
Right.
Whereas 2 years ago when I started, or almost 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago when I started the clinic now, I wasn't attracting anyone like that. I was attracting people who are like, look, I have this problem.
It's very mechanistic.
Can you do it? And I'd be like, heck yeah, I can do it. And then most of the time I could, and occasionally I couldn't. Because that's what they call it, practice, right? Occasionally I could not deliver what I thought I could deliver. But luckily ABC kind of dragged me along for the ride, luckily, because ABC is so correct that even if I wasn't that good at it, it was still better than the old way. Yeah. So most of the time I would deliver.
I think you've mastered that technique. And so you're able to talk about different things with patients while you're doing that in the background almost.
I've gotten better. There's still things that I want to refine. There's too many things, and there's still, like when, for example, when someone side switches. Now that's not going to be anything to anybody watching this, unless you're a patient and you've had a side switch. Right. Then I can't wait to hear your comments below on the video. And that's a great time to say, hey, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel because we need you to spread this. When I go and look at the statistics on our YouTube page and stuff, it's like 80% of the people that watch our content, 90% are not subscribed. So if you're watching this right
subscribe.
Now, so yeah, if you're watching
and leave
this,
a comment,
yeah,
please.
Yeah,
start a dialogue,
for the
open
love
the conversation.
Of God, yes, please. Even if it's a negative, I'll
Mom,
let it,
you're the only one that watches this. Please write a comment.
If it's a negative one, I'll let it sit on there. That's okay. You will help me in the algorithms. I had one. This one made me.
We won't delete
chuckle.
Haters.
This one made me chuckle the other day on Facebook. It's like, I think you and I have discussed this a million times, and of course too. Like I've gotten so much better about. Crying about my problems. I'm still doing it though. It's like occasionally I grab a patient. I'm like, look, man, you're going to listen to my problems this time.
Right.
I listen to your problems 9 times out of 10. I need to complain about one thing in my life one time. Right. But I am getting better. But this one just made me chuckle because I've gotten to the point when a hater's on a video or something like that, it doesn't even bother me anymore. I actually have a good chuckle about it. Just kind of how creative they get as a troll. Like how much effort it takes of like how creative they're going to get. So this one was like, made me really chuckle. This guy commented on one of our recent videos I posted, and he was like, oh man, what did he say? I should almost pull it up. I'm using my phone as one of the cameras, so I guess I can't pull it up. But he was like, he was like, I saw my video. He's like, nope, not for me. I'd rather take a pill. And but then he had like a series of comments. I can't remember them all, but he like commented 4 or 5 times.
So he's still watching.
He's still
watching.
And I'm like, dude, you're helping me get higher in the algorithm.
Yeah. My favorite one is that woman who commented on our video. She's like, "Oh, there is something seriously wrong with this," or "I would never do that to people," or something. And then it offended her so badly that she copied and shared it to her own page.
She did.
And so now our video is running on her page, and now her friends are commenting on. They're like, "Looks good to me. I wish I could do that." Oh, what's his number?
I'm like, I gotta get this lady on more videos. I was like, we gotta contact that lady. Maybe I should like jab her a little bit, let her ride. Because
Karen, this one's for you.
I'm like, Karen, keep going. Like, I'm like, she liked and subscribed and shared that video more than anybody. But of course she gives a thumbs down or the angry face, but I don't think she realized that the angry face actually still bumps you up in the algorithm.
Yeah, I'll take it. Play the video. Someone that needs to see it's going to see it.
Well, it's like, unfortunately, negativity also sells and whatever, and stuff like that. And that's not the reason why I make the videos. The reason why I make the videos, well, there's several reasons. At first, the reason I started making chiropractic videos, not ever because I thought I'm going to be rich from them, yada, yada. It's just, honestly, I was sick of doing in-person marketing events. It had nothing to do with anything but that. I didn't want to run a booth anymore. I used to run booths. Like, when I first opened the clinic, I would work 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, to treat nobody, right? I'd be there 6 hours. The phone would never ring. And I'd treat 2 people that day. And it was never, it was never as good as, like it is now, right? My results were nowhere near as good as they were then, right? So I'm usually dealing with half the time with fallout, where someone's like mildly disappointed, and I'm like, oh my God, and I'm sweating and drenched in sweat, right? We could always talk about your early days of ABC, right? Shack on
that
the
still happens.
Shack on the
free throw line.
Shack on the free throw line, right? But so it's just like. And then Saturday, Sunday, I would spend the entire weekend doing a booth at like weird events, like a teachers conference thing. And it was just, oh my God, I really respect and like teachers, but like things like this, where it's like they get the tchotchke bag and it's like, they're just filling it with like crap that's going to go in the ocean. It's just like a bunch of like a stress ball.
That no one really squeezes in.
A pen that falls apart after 3 uses, and a keychain that's so ugly you would never want to put it on your keys. Right. And then it goes into a bag that you'll never use, that was supposed to be used for like groceries or something, but then you still go to Albertsons or something like that, and you're using the plastic one anyway. It doesn't even matter, And so I just got really sick of that. And so that's actually why I started making the videos and stuff like that on the social media channels. But then it kind of like organically started to like change itself into something bigger. It's like, I started bringing in new patients and things like that. More interesting new patients that kind of were, I would argue, more interested. So they were long-term people, not short-term people.
Well, with social media and the internet, you can have a lot of content so people can digest a lot of stuff that you've done before they ever see you.
Oh, yeah.
They're pre-educated. They know what you do. They know what to expect. It's just so much better. I'm 20 years your senior, right? In chiropractic. And I spent oodles, hundreds of weekends at the Diabetes Expo, the Women's Expo, the Home and Garden Show. We did spinal screenings where we did bilateral weights, and I had all the strings. And really, the truth is, you just got to go where the people are.
Right.
So that marketing sucked, but I built a clinic. I built a dynasty doing it. And being there every day stunk, but then meeting those, I still have patients in my office today, 20 years later, that I met at the Women's Expo and, at the fairgrounds in 2003.
That's nuts.
Or they'll say, I still remember that flyer you stuck in my car at Target, or, it's just like that stuff still works. So now you're increasing your influence. Social media just amplifies things you can do. You can reach so much farther than the Women's Expo.
Yeah.
With one podcast, you can see 10,000 people or more. And at the Women's Expo, I'd interact with 100 people all weekend.
And it's cheaper. That's the crazy thing.
Cheaper, better. And now you can be creative.
Oh, yeah.
You can create the content and you can sculpt your message. I couldn't do that at the Women's Expo. It's fascinating. It's freedom. It's fun.
You're like next to the vaginal rejuvenation technology booth, and you're like, well, he's rejuvenating your privates. Can I rejuvenate your back? It's just not a great. It's not a great message. It's just, and the problem is a lot of people in our profession and others are still doing that. And I'm like, guys, you have to. And this is another thing I may eventually go into, which might be coaching privately over the phone or in person. Maybe they fly me out, I check out their clinic and stuff and teach them how to do this from scratch. Take the power away from having to hire marketing. I paid every dang marketing company to do this for a while because I got too busy, and I was spending $2,000-$3,000 a month just paying them, and then the other $1,000 was to run ads and do things. And it was awful. It didn't work. It didn't attract the right people. What people want is realness. They want this. They want a podcast. They want a video of you treating somebody. They want testimonials. Like that's what people want to see. And that's how you're going to attract like the people you want. So I think at some point I might do some private consulting for people for a nominal fee or something like that, just because I feel like if I could teach them how to do social media on their own, like I've had to learn from scratch. I didn't know how to do any of this.
Right.
I was just telling you before we started the podcast, I was trying to figure out how to run this podcast 12 hours like yesterday, or 10 hours. Like I started at like 3:00 and I got done at like 12:30 in the morning just to learn how to set up all this equipment. I mean, I'll pull up right here. Look how much equipment that is. And that's not even showing you all the stuff that's behind the camera.
Right.
I've got 3 different cameras here. I've got lights. I mean, it's like crazy. I got the Stream Deck thingy, whatever this is. I had just recently bought that and I had to figure out just the basics on how to use that so we can have cool camera angles and get the perspective right and put this room together so it looked nice. And, you know, it's just like, but it's just interesting to think about because, you know, kind of the evolution of where we're really going with this thing. And, you know, once again, I think it does dive into the purpose of what we're doing. Honestly, I've been having dreams about it. I've been having dreams about like this podcast and where this is going to go. It's going to blow up. It's going to be huge. This podcast right now, if you're watching this, you're going to be one of the early adopters of something that I think is going to be massive. I do. I just know it. And
That's awesome.
And I'm putting the energy out there.
Good.
I'm putting big D energy out there. That this is,
All men and women created by
the thing.
I'm putting big energy out there.
You're claiming it.
Well, that's the thing.
I love
And
it.
you could have, and I think, you know, since we're getting close, we're about an hour and a minute here. When it just goes by so quick. I mean, I could see how Joe Rogan does like a 3. I've been watching Joe Rogan for a while and he has like 3.5 hour. I can see how that happens because, you know, nobody does real discussions as much like this anymore.
Well,
you know,
he puts interesting people on.
yeah. Well,
You
I
should
think
do
we're
that.
interesting. I think we're really interesting. I mean, we got to be better than like, you know, some of the podcasts out there, right? A lot of the, you know, the podcasts out there, they put, you know, 2 hot chicks together or something like, which I guess is interesting, right? On a surface level, but I don't think it stimulates your mind,
No.
you know? And I mean, not everybody wants their mind to be stimulated. Some people just want to just look at attractive people talk about nothing for 2 hours, and that's cool. But I think this podcast is much more dedicated to getting a deeper perspective on a lot of different topics. I'm really excited for future episodes to dig into a lot of stuff.
I am too. I think the conversation we had today is about 15 different episodes in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what you have to say on politics and epistemology and physiology and philosophy. And we'll get there.
Boy, we could dig into Brandon for an hour on itself.
Oh, yeah.
And my theories
Hey,
about
Let's go, Brandon.
let's go, Brandon. Right. But I don't really get that much into politics as much as people think. The only reason I'm into politics is because I have to be, because they keep taking away more of our freedoms. You know, I'm a freedom guy. That's my thing. I mean, here I am wearing the Hodge Twins t-shirt, right? But the 1776 t-shirt, right? But that just kind of was more of just a happening thing. The reason I actually bought their shirt to support their show is because it's a freedom thing. I feel like you should have the right to be able to say whatever you like and then let other people determine if they like what you're saying.
Right.
You know, to have an open dialogue. I think in future episodes, I'm probably going to say some things that are going to push some people. And that's why this podcast that's why I named it. A lot of people say, why'd you come up with the Unruly Doctor? And I said, for a specific reason, because I'm going to say some things that are going to push your brain. I'm going to push your mind. I'm going to say things that may make you uncomfortable, not in a bad way, but just make you really think about, you know what I mean? Like there's people
Stretch your beliefs.
Well, there's people who probably listen to this podcast today and said, oh my God, I've never thought about what my purpose was. So I just gave them an uncomfortable thought right there, because now they're sitting at home listening to this and realizing that they don't think that their life has a purpose. And they're going to have to try to now figure out, what is that purpose? You know, are they actually on the path? They're not seeing angel numbers. They're not even know what I'm talking about. You know, they don't go every day with a passion about what their job is, and they're too afraid to quit. Someone may very well listen to what we're saying at some point, and it might inspire them to actually, and I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping it inspires them to find why are they actually here. You know, I mean, I'm sure that some people, their reason for being here is to have an easier life, or a life where you're not having to push the limit. If every time you incarnated on Earth, you had to live an intense life,
Hustle.
if you had to constantly hustle or whatever, or if every life you came here, you were a homeless person or a disabled person, you had to learn a lot of those hard lessons of different things, right? My God, existence would be very difficult, right? Occasionally, you got to have just a softball pitch, where you can knock it out of the park no matter what occasionally, right? Or just live a life where nobody bothers you and it doesn't matter, right? But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this second episode of the podcast. I don't know what I'm going to label it. I think I'm going to label it Introduction to Dr. S. That sounds like a good...
that sounds boring.
No, that sounds like a great Spider-Man villain nickname. Like
Dr. S.
Dr. S. Yeah, like, I don't know maybe you shoot snakes out of a cannon or something. I like superheroes, so...
As much scar tissue as you have removed from my body, I should be shooting scar tissue out my fingers or something.
I should be floating. I meditate so often. I've taken so many scar tissue pieces. For the love of God, I should have grown wings by now. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this second episode of the podcast. So we're going to get this uploaded ASAP after our last episode. I haven't decided quite yet what the schedule is going to look like. I could see where this could be a once a week thing every Saturday. I could also see this be every 2 weeks on a Saturday or something. I feel like once a month would be not enough. I really don't think it's enough because I have a lot to say. I think we have a lot to say. I think there's a lot of people that I could have as guests on the podcast that easily could create.
Well, if we're going to have unscripted conversations, we could do this almost daily. Right. It's when you have a pad, we're going to cover this and this and this, and so now I have to go do research about this and this and this, and so we're not preparing each show. We're just having conversation.
Well, I think a lot of
these, we can do that as much as we need.
I think a lot of these are going to be just conversations, and I think other ones will have more of a seasoning to it where, I may pull up some studies of things. I may pull up some books of just things that people may be interested in. Get guests on here that are relevant. Like I want to do an episode on homeopathy because I know a homeopath in Phoenix. There's not very many of them left, and a lot of people don't even know what that word even is. Right. They think of the word homeopathic and they think that means an herb.
I think it just means natural.
I'm going to give you a hint. That ain't what it means. There's a whole history there. So anyways, like and subscribe to this video. And if you're listening to us on the audio channel, please like our Spotify page, our iHeartRadio page. We're also getting approved right now for Apple Podcasts. So maybe by the time you guys get this, maybe Apple will actually get there together and actually get that.
We'll be everywhere.
I'm just going to keep hitting that fart button. It's like one of the favorite ones I added besides Joe Biden. One more time.
All men and women created.
There he is.
Go, you know the thing.
I'm gonna laugh about that every time.
Let's
hit that.
go, Brandon.
I was never leaving off that done. So anyway, guys, have a great day.